Some bad transfers just flop. These ones damaged projects, burned huge money, and left clubs asking what on earth they paid for. Here are the 10 worst transfers in football history. At number 10, Kepa to Chelsea. On paper, this looked like a club securing its goalkeeper for the next decade. In reality, Chelsea paid world record money for a keeper who never gave off world record confidence. He had decent stretches, but the fee changed everything. Once you spend that much on a goalkeeper, solid is not enough. You need authority, consistency, and the feeling that the backline is safe. That feeling never fully arrived. Kepa played plenty of games, but the story around him was always the same. Nerves, mistakes, pressure, and then losing his place. The biggest problem was not that he was terrible every week. It was that Chelsea paid elite, history-making money and got a player who felt replaceable. For a normal fee, this is just disappointing. For the most expensive goalkeeper ever, it is a clear flop. Number 9 is Antoine Griezmann to Barcelona. This was supposed to be one of those smart superstar moves where everything just clicks. It never really did. Barcelona paid huge money for a player who was already proven, already elite, and meant to slide straight into the top line. Instead, he always looked slightly out of place. Good player, wrong fit. And when that happens at this price, the transfer starts sinking fast. 35 goals in just over 100 games is not a disaster by itself. But context matters. Barca did not buy Griezmann to be decent or useful. They bought him to change games, lift the attack, and become one of the faces of the project. He never looked fully natural in that system, and the move ended with him going back to Atletico. Compared with some names below him, this was not chaos. It was just expensive disappointment. At number 8, Alexis Sanchez to Manchester United. This felt massive when it happened. United were not signing a project player. They were taking one of the Premier League's biggest attacking names from Arsenal and expecting instant impact. A leader. A difference maker. Someone who would raise the level straight away. What they actually got was a player who looked flat, uncomfortable, and nowhere near his best almost from day one. The numbers say plenty, 5 goals in 45 games. But even beyond the stats, he never looked like the player United thought they were getting. The move had hype, huge wages, and the feeling of a statement signing. It quickly turned into dead weight, and he was moved on fast. With all due respect to other underwhelming Premier League deals, this one felt especially bad because the drop-off was so obvious. Number 7 is Andriy Shevchenko to Chelsea. This one hurt because of who he was before the move. Chelsea were buying one of Europe's most feared strikers, a proven killer, a player with huge status. It should have been simple. Give him service, let him score. But in London, he never really looked like that same striker. The sharpness was not the same, the confidence dropped, and the whole move felt heavier with every month. His Premier League return was only 9 goals in 48 games, and that says everything. Yes, he still had moments. And yes, he was dealing with form and physical issues. But for a striker of Shevchenko's level, and for a club record deal at the time, Chelsea expected a lot more than flashes. Compared with some names lower down, there was still pedigree here. But the transfer itself was a major miss. At number 6, Paul Pogba back to Manchester United. This one is tricky because it was not a complete disaster on the pitch. He had strong spells, big performances, and some excellent numbers for a midfielder. But that is exactly why it is here. United did not pay a world record fee at the time for good moments. They paid for a defining player, the man who would lead a new era, and that never really happened. The package was always bigger than the football. The fee, the noise, the expectations, the constant feeling that the club still had not unlocked the real version of Pogba. He finished with goals, assists, and trophies, so this is not the same kind of flop as the top 3. But for that price and that build-up, pretty good sometimes, just does not carry enough weight. That is why he sits right here. Number 5 is Romelo Lukaku back to Chelsea in 2021. This was meant to solve a huge problem. Chelsea had just won the Champions League and wanted the final piece up front. Lukaku arrived as the answer, a striker in top form, a player who looked ready to dominate the Premier League again. Instead, the second spell collapsed almost immediately. The fit was awkward. The momentum disappeared, and the whole thing turned sour way too fast. In league terms, 8 goals in 36 matches is nowhere near good enough for that kind of money. What makes this one brutal is how quickly Chelsea seemed to give up on the idea. After a club record fee, he was basically out of the project and back in Italy on loan. Another expensive striker flop deserves a mention, but Lukaku edges them because the fall from final piece to not wanted was so fast. At number 4, Fernando Torres to Chelsea. This transfer is famous because everyone knew how good Torres had been at Liverpool. Chelsea were not buying a risky talent or a player still figuring things out. They were paying British record money for one of the biggest strikers in the league. The problem was timing. The version of Torres they wanted was already slipping away, and Chelsea paid peak star money right as the decline had started. That is what makes this move so painful. The contrast is impossible to ignore. He was deadly at Liverpool, but at Chelsea the numbers and overall level dropped hard. To be fair, he still had memorable goals and important moments in big matches. But that does not save the transfer itself. For the fee, the name, and the expectations, Chelsea bought a superstar striker and got the late version instead. Number 3 is Ousmane Dembele to Barcelona. This is where the ranking starts getting really ugly. Barca signed him as one of the major pieces of the post-Neymar rebuild and spent massive money to do it. The talent was obvious. Nobody doubted that. But transfers are judged by what the club actually gets, not by what the player might be when fully fit. And for long stretches, Barcelona got injuries, frustration, and endless waiting. The early years were the killer. He missed huge chunks of time, never built rhythm properly, and the club kept paying for potential while the team needed production. Later on, he did contribute, and the full totals do not look terrible. But that almost makes the story stranger. For a fee like that, Barcelona needed a franchise winger from the start, not a player who spent so much time in recovery. That is why he lands in the top 3. At number 2, Philippe Coutinho to Barcelona. This is one of the cleanest examples of a club spending huge money on a beautiful name without really solving the football question. Coutinho was brilliant at Liverpool, no doubt. But at Barca, the role never felt right, the impact never matched the fee, and the move slowly became a symbol of bad planning. It was expensive, awkward, and impossible to justify once the returns started looking ordinary. Then came the detail that pushed this transfer into football history. Barcelona sent him out on loan to Bayern, and he ended up scoring against them in that brutal 8-2 defeat. You genuinely could not write a worse twist for the club. On top of that, they later sold him for a fraction of what they paid. Some transfers fail quietly. Coutinho's failed loudly, publicly, and in the most embarrassing way possible. Only one deal beats it. Number 1 is Eden Hazard to Real Madrid. For me, this is the worst transfer in football history. Real were not buying a risky young player or someone with big doubts around him. They were signing one of the best attackers in the world, a man expected to lead the next phase of the club after years of brilliance in England. It should have been huge. Instead, it turned into injuries, lost sharpness, and almost no real legacy at all. The gap between expectation and outcome is what makes this number 1. Real paid superstar money and got only flashes across 4 miserable years. 7 goals, 12 assists, and a contract ended early says everything. With respect to Coutinho and Dembele, Madrid expected a cornerstone and received almost nothing of lasting value. When a club like Real makes its record signing and the whole era feels wasted, that is the worst kind of transfer failure. That is what makes bad transfers so brutal. It is never just about the fee. It is about the promise, the timing, the hype, and how badly the reality misses the picture. And these 10 deals missed by miles. So, which one should be higher, lower, or missing from the list? Drop your number 1 worst transfer ever in the comments. And if you enjoyed the ranking, like the video and subscribe for more football lists.